Here at the Tabletop Bellhop, when we aren't recapping recent gaming events, we're here to answer your gaming and game night questions. Tonight's question comes from longtime fan of the show, Math Guy Dave, who asks, would some board games be better as video games? I mean, even Gloomhaven, the computer version, is so appealing to me because of the setup. Civilization, Roller Coaster Tycoon, real-time strategy games, these are all board game types I like, but that work way better as video games. I think there is a limit to how much managing and counting a human wants to handle. What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, thanks for the great question, Dave. Now, the other day, not just last Sunday, I was playing Oros with the family and then came looking for our topic this week. And I've got to say, Oros probably played into that because Oros is definitely a game that's very fiddly and has some not issues, but can be a little hard to track. And there's things you often have to look up in the book. And while playing, we kind of commented like, you know, this is one of those games where I almost wish it was a video game because it would handle all this. And I wouldn't have to look up those edge cases. So I was thinking that already. I went through our spreadsheet. I saw this question and I went, wow, this is perfect. Plus, Dave used to be a patron of ours, so it's good to get to their questions. So yes, I think in general there are some, and I think this is something we've said many times about games. And if my memory serves, especially in the first 4 years of us recording, I think Sean used to say this quite often.
Yep. You know, the thing with Oros that amused me is it always reminds me a bit of Populous, right? So we've come full circle. I'm like, they took Populous, they made it into a board game, and now really I think they could take that board game and make it into a digital implementation and it would be better. So that amuses me. You guys were looking up rules, and really it's all about when the land masses move together and how they slide and how things go up and how the lava flows. And you're constantly double checking or correcting each other as you're doing it. I wasn't playing, I was just listening to you. I know it was similar to when we played it, but when we played it, it was our first go, right? Now we're like 3 plays in and it's still a little rough. So at this point, I'm really feeling like there's just something about this game that it doesn't flow, at least not for me, right? And yeah, it feels like it needs a digital implementation. The other thing I want to call out before I'm going to hand over to Sean is in the question, he mentioned Roller Coaster Tycoon. Like, wasn't that a video game before it was a board game?
Yes.
And Civilization, again, a video game before it was.
No, Civ was board first.
Civ was a board game.
Because I'm thinking of like Sid Meier's.
Yes, that was
Sid
a
Meier's
board game
first.
It was a board game first?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. See, I know nothing.
It's one of Charles's favorite games. He's invited you to play it multiple times.
Yeah, that I knew, but I actually thought it was a video game first and then a board game. I knew both existed. All right.
No, that one's like a full circle because like there was Civilization, then they made the Civilization video games, and then they made Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, and then there were more video games, and then they made that one just keeps going in a circle. We actually have an edition of Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, downstairs that's on our pile of shame. We still haven't played, that I got and I traded when I traded away my copy of Rising Sun. I got it with a bunch of other games, and I'm like, and then I know they've kind of went back and forth with that game, and like some things inspire one and they inspire the other, and so yeah, and that's not the only example. I think there's actually quite a few games out there that have gone tabletop to video game, back to tabletop, or the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been thinking a lot about this, and because early on in this podcast, there were a lot of games like, why isn't this a video game? Why isn't this a video game?
Yes.
And I think a lot of it comes down to one simple, sort of easily isolated concept for me. And that is the game about the mechanics of the game, the physical doing of things, or is it about the interactions with people? Now, those can be part of the mechanics, but if you're not interacting with people, if you're fiddling all on the board and dealing with stuff, and you don't need to check people's cards or, worry about the other people, then absolutely it should be a video game. Not even just an implementation of, no, just make it a video game, because so much of board games is the people and the interaction and the social aspect of the board game. And if you don't need that, then make it a video game.
Now, what's funny about that to me is that you play social deduction games on Board Game Arena where you don't have that player in your face interaction.
I've never actively chosen to do that. People invite me to games that I don't even usually know are social deduction games until I start playing the game. So That's
okay. Another one would be other games that I consider not social deduction but highly social games like Hanabi. I'm like, I guess you can play Hanabi purely mechanically, but why would you?
Well, you don't have a copy of Hanabi. I can't play Hanabi with you. I can play it online with a bunch of people I've never met in my life.
Over there.
We have Hanabi. We could easily play Hanabi.
Oh, well, then we should bring it out to Walkerville sometime. I'll teach somebody. But no, I mean, again, Board Game Arena is a place where I play with people I have never met and probably will never met who on the other side of the country. Right. And so in that particular case, I think there are exceptions to be made because that is enabling an experience that could not exist otherwise compared to taking a board game and making a video game of it, like Gloomhaven, which is, I think, a perfect example, as opposed to the Board Game Arena type thing.
And since you mentioned Gloom,
I think it's actually two different things. Board Game Arena, playing with other humans, a digital implementation of the game, I think is a little bit different than a video game where you're playing versus an AI.
So I don't know if Math Guy Daves would call that out as different or not. Because it's interesting, because, right, like some video game versions of board games we did not enjoy more. Like you look at Terraforming Mars. Yep, Terraforming Mars to me is a very fiddly game. There's lots of cards to keep track of. There's little cubes. There's icons. There's all this stuff you have to be paying attention to play that game well. So you would think it would be absolutely fantastic digitally. And I admit some people do like the digital version. But I find in the digital version, it's too hard to find the information I need. Whereas physically, I can just look around the table or I can ask another player, hey, how many fungi do you have? Hey, how many animal cubes do you have? Hey, do you have anything that eats cubes? Because I'm thinking about playing this card. Whereas the digital version, you got to like switch to the other player and then you got to bring up a little menu and then you got to look at all their tags. And I'm like, I found it almost unplayable. It was driving me bonkers because stuff I found easy to do in person was actually more difficult, even though it was handling all the other stuff for me. So it's like, and one side it helped out by managing all those cubes and putting things, and when I hit activate this thing, it did all the math for me. But then on the other side, it wasn't providing the information I wanted when I needed it.
Mm-hmm. Whereas for me, the one that always sticks out in my mind is Castles of Burgundy, because tooltips and like to be able to mouse over and read what everything does. I find Castle of Burgundy so much better to play on Board Game Arena than in real life, because the iconography on that game is I don't know about the new shiny deluxe version. I haven't played that one, but and then when you play it online and you can mouse over, all the information is there. So again, the information is easier to read than it is in the other.
Whereas in Terraforming Mars, I think the problem we've got is Terraforming Mars requires a lot of space. And so one of the reasons why it plays well at the table is because you can take up a big table, spread out your cards, and look across the table and see everyone else's stuff. Mm-hmm. Because of the amount of space it can take up, the screen real estate became an issue. So they looked to a way to manage your screen real estate. And in doing so, reduced the interactive screen looking sort of aspects. Whereas because they have had to fight with screen real estate, you can't just turn to your left and see whether or not they've got 3 cubes on a card. And that ruins Terraforming Mars.
Which is why I find Carcassonne just impossible to play online. Like it to me, and it should be dead simple to turn that into a digital game. But there's to be able to see what's going on, I have to scroll in so close that I'm then just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling to get to the other side of the board to be able to place my tile. It's ridiculous.
My question on Carc is, are you speaking specifically about the Board Game Arena version, or have you played the actual Asmodee Carcassonne app?
Yeah, because
I believe we played it, and I believe it was the Board Game Arena version. I played it with you and Mo.
Because I have had fantastic experiences on the actual Asmodee, like pay for Carcassonne app. Right. It is a beautiful user experience. I prefer it to playing in person or on VGA. That's one of those games where, again, it's mechanical and they did it right in the Asmodee app.
Actually, going back, I think that used to be available on PlayStation or something. And
it was
Xbox,
on the Xbox, and it was really good.
Quite clever. Yeah. And the AI was decent. Like you could play it against a computer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another example of where I think this is definitely true, and Math Guy Dave brought it up in his thing, is like Gloomhaven, right? The computer version is so appealing because of the setup. But it's not just the setup. We used to live stream Gloomhaven. If you go on our YouTube channel and look at our most popular videos, there's all kinds there. And you can watch as we progress through various different technological tools while playing, eventually settling on the amazing Gloomhaven Helper app. Which, to be fair, I haven't touched Gloomhaven since before COVID, so maybe that app's garbage now. Maybe it's still supported. I don't know. But we used to use it, which is called Gloomhaven Helper. It was the big app, was so useful to us that we used it while we were live streaming. And there are parts of Gloomhaven we never will touch again because the app handled all of that. And that had nothing to do with setup. That wasn't setting up anything. It had to do with managing cards. It was the cards and the health and the status effects for the creatures, the AI. The monsters in the game, because every monster had its own deck.
I think one thing, it's really hard to avoid the conclusion that a lot of solo games, when you're playing with Atoma, again, that's a computer. It's a computer that has been reduced to a deck of cards. The computer was the better solution, but because you don't have a computer, they figured out a way to do it with a deck of cards. In most cases, if you're playing against some sort of AI that has been codified into cards or dice or whatever Atoma solution has been evolved, the computer is going to do that better, unfortunately. So I think a lot of solo games, to me, one of the reasons why I have a hard time, and I think this might be count for Mo as well, one of the reasons why that solo game isn't really fun is because you're doing so much work on your own on your off turn in order to get to your turn again. It's just there's all that mechanical stuff going on that gets in the way.
So I think where it shines is when a game is basically multiplayer solitaire. Any game that, like you said, where there's not a lot of player interactions and you're doing your thing and you're doing your thing, that's going to play well online. But I do think the majority of board games, I'd rather be sitting at a table with a human.
Yeah. I think I would also add games that are extremely fiddly. Now, the game that comes to mind for this is Teotihuacan, which I don't know if you remember because we haven't played this in quite a long time, but that was the game where your actions had multiple chained consequences, where you would use your dice, you would move to a spot, you would do a thing, but then because this went up, this other track would go up, and because that went up, you got to go over here, and because you went over there, you get to put like a building in the graveyard. And every single time we played that game, and that was a game that we basically 10 by 10. I've played that game more than 10 times. I brought it to Queen City Conquest and ran the game as part of my entry fee as I hosted people playing Teotihuacan. I love the game. It's a fantastic game, but it was so fiddly. Every single game I played, it would be not like, oh, wait, I forgot this. It would be 2 turns later. It would be like, I'm done, Sean's done, Deanna's going. And then I'd be like, oh, wait, when I went up over here, I should have moved this guy over here, which got me the thing. Okay, do you mind if I do that? And it never impacted the other players' play, but like we were constantly doing that, to the fact that I said what Sean often said, like, this would be better as a video game. There's just too many little things to track and chain reactions. And yes, if you're playing well, you're planning for some of those, but you still forget some because there was like, oh, I forgot I have this special ability I unlocked 3 turns ago that now gives me an extra wood. And if I had the extra wood, I could have actually put this track up. And like, that is the worst game in my collection I've ever played for takebacks. And they're all valid. Like, people literally forgot things. They weren't playing badly. The rule book isn't even badly written. Like, I guess it's the fault of the game.
It's a lot of little steps. You're right.
Yeah.
Is there a digital implementation of Weatherlight? Because I think that was another one where we were like, wait a second, back it up. You couldn't even have done that. That's not a legal move.
One other aspect that goes well, and again, this sort of goes towards that multiplayer solitaire concept but games where you have limited communication, games where you aren't allowed to table talk, where you aren't allowed to discuss your hands and things like that. That actually makes it easier to follow the rules. Now, so again, some people don't like that. Some people like to have their own versions of table talk and things like that. But if you are playing a game, the space one that we played, The Crew is a perfect example of where you can't talk about stuff. And so if you're all in different rooms and just looking at the same interface, you're forced into that lack of communication method. And that actually works pretty well for that.
What's funny about that's where getting to you playing Hanabi online is actually probably closer to the designer's intended way to play Hanabi than the way most people play it. And yeah, the crew actually plays great on Board Game Arena. Like the crew was really good, but that's not completely limited. It's somewhat limited communication, but the fact you had the chat box there, you could still talk about the stuff you had to talk about. Other ones that came to mind for me, and not specific games, but things that could definitely be improved by digital implementations, are end of game round mechanics, like annoying setup where you have to wipe everything. Now, this is one of my favorite things about Castles of Burgundy, because Castles of Burgundy, if I play it enough in a row, I remember what the buildings do. But man, do I hate having to wipe the board and pull out the new chits every turn. And okay, did we have all the gray chits? Okay, we have all the green chits. Okay, let's pull one of these out. Oh, then I got to pull out the different market tokens and stack those up.
The time difference playing that on BGA, I can zip through a game versus how long it takes to play it in real life.
Yeah, so anything that's got that super annoying clear the board and rebuild the market, right? Like anything that's more than like Star Realms where you just flip up a new card's fine. But generally anything that wipes and you have to reset up, like there's games I stopped playing because of that, because the games now take too long. And I'm doing this like maintenance, right? This between turn upkeep that takes longer than playing the actual game. And I think that's where games can be better implemented digitally.
Well, I think you said a key word there, or a key phrase there, and that's when it takes longer between the turns than on the turns. And so that's actually a scaling problem within the game, I think. Because when you're first starting a game, you could be taking 10 minutes for a turn, and maybe it takes 7 minutes to change the round, but you're thinking about the stuff you did last turn, and you're worrying about what you're going to do next turn, and that's fine. But then, 5 plays in, you've got it down. You've got something planned. You know what you're doing. You remember what you did last turn. You know what you're aiming for next turn. And now the 6 or 7 minute in between is agonizing because your actual turn time is down to 4. And that's a scaling problem for the game. They probably possibly have not played it often enough to get people to that point to realize, oh, wait a second, we've got a time sink here. That's a problem.
End game scoring, I mean, if it's complicated, but I mean, mostly I like the BG Stats app and walking through the little score sheet on there. I can't think of any game that I would rather it be digital based on the end game scoring.
No, I agree. And even like math heavy games, I'm like, part of that's doing the math, in my opinion. Like part of the fun for me playing Power Grid is having to do the math. And I can't remember what game it is. Maybe you two will remember. It was ruined playing it on Board Game Arena because we could see everyone else's score. And I can't remember what game that was, but I much prefer.
Yeah, and it took the fun right out of it. I remember, but I can't remember what game it was.
I can't remember what game it was, but I was like, no, this isn't fun anymore because it's doing all the math. And I'm like, I want that. I have to try to remember what you've scored and what you haven't and who's in the lead and who to attack. And like, to me, that's a fun part of gameplay. And it's the reason Power Grid's supposed to have closed market, even though almost everyone plays it with poker chips. I refuse to play with poker chips because you're not supposed to know how much money everyone has. Now, it wasn't Power Grid. It was something else. And I don't remember what game it was, but there's something on Board Game Arena that we stopped playing because the game was doing the math and it just wasn't as fun anymore. It lost an aspect of the game that we felt was important.
Now, to be fair, that in that particular game, that wasn't a defined aspect of the game. You were supposed to be able to, you could look at anyone's thing and do the math and figure it out. The information was there. They were just doing the math for you. So you didn't have to look at another player and say, oh, you got 3 of those, 5 of those, 7 of those. Okay, so it's 15. It just showed you the 15.
But it was one of those that, like, unless you're, Rain Man, you wouldn't be able to do it during game without making it a 4-hour game. Like, there was enough different factors that, like, yes, if you wanted to spend the turn, you could sit there and math out everyone's score before taking your move, but then they would never invite you to play with them again.
Yeah, and I can't remember what game it was. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's bugging me.
Yeah, I remember it coming up.
It was more like you have 73, you have 62. It was bigger numbers. Yeah.
Oh, you know what it was? It was Point Salad.
Was it?
Yes,
yeah, it was Point Salad.
Right.
Yeah, Point Salad.
Point Salad is not as much fun if I can consistently see whether I'm winning or losing with every card. It recalculates.
Well, no, it wasn't Point. You could take back
at the end of the game.
You could, that's what the worst part was. You could literally just draft a point card. It would adjust it on the fly, and you could put it back and grab the other one and put that back and grab the next one. Go, okay, this one gave me the most points. That's what it was.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, it removed the fun from it. You were right. That's what it was. Point salad.
Yeah, I knew it was playing, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, I remember now. So we do have some questions from the chat that play into this. So first one up, these are actually all from Charlie Brown Windsor. Shame on the rest of you lobbyists. But first question is, what ancient board game, I'm going to take offense to that, but what ancient board game have you played as a digital?
I mean, Mahjong. That's ancient. There you go.
Yeah. Mahjong.
Chess,
I played
Mahjong.
digitally.
I think if you want to go
chess.
modern-ish board games, I have played the Game of Life digitally. I have played Monopoly digitally. Yep. So if you want to talk 20th century ancient board games, I've definitely got both of those under my belt.
Terra Mystica. I like that one on digital. I play it quite a bit.
Oh, so there's one. That's an example of one that is, I know we're getting away from the question, going back to what we were talking about, that is just fiddly enough that I do prefer that digital. That one's like borderline. That's my, I'll still happily play that in person, but that is one I actually prefer digitally. Just the moving the power pools and all the different abilities, and it remembers everything. Because that's one of those games where I always forget to collect something. Where I'm like, oh wait, I forgot this income because this is covered up, or I forget I can't remember the two big buildings, but they give you unique powers, and I'll forget that I have one of those powers. Terra Mystica is definitely one it's like right on the edge for me. I will play it either way. So
for a while there, I was playing quite a bit of Tapestry on Board Game Arena, and what was interesting about that was it was constantly being updated and errataed and rebalanced. And eventually they came out with a second printing of the game and cards that you could add into your existing board game. But as you were playing it on Board Game Arena, the game was evolving and changing. So I'm not sure if that's a plus or a minus, but it's certainly something different about digital games is that they can be patched.
Yes. Well, and to go to that, the Terraforming Mars Steam app regularly gets bug fixes. And I don't mean it gets bug fixes. And that's concerning because that when I see, oh, look, in the past 2 years, they've had 12 bug fixes. Well, does that mean all those games I played 2 years ago could have been broken?
Maybe the AI just got better.
No, I've looked at some of the patch lists. They've got card interaction problems, and they are bug fixing problems in the rules of the game because again, it's a tricky game, but it's not a mathematically tricky game. It's that weird interactions and things that aren't as, I guess, as easily ruled out games. All right.
So when Charlie Brown Windsor asked about old games, one that popped in my head was Black Box, which is a game from 1977. We semi-recently discovered my dad's copy, and Dan and I were playing quite a bit for a while there until I found an online implementation, and then I could just play infinitely with random AI setups, or not AI, randomly generated setups. And that's a super classic game that the physical version is fiddly. And it's very easy for a player to make a mistake and provide the wrong information, which ruins the game.
All right, so we got another question from Charlie Brown. Which game have each of you played as digital that really should not have been elevated? I think we sort of covered this. We may even all have the same answer here. I'm not sure.
Point salad.
Well, point salad we just mentioned. Though point salad's fine.
I'm not sure elevated is a term I would use for most digital implementations.
I mean, Terraforming Mars stands out for me.
But yeah.
Because even though I'm not the huge Terraforming Mars fan you guys are, I do like the game, except I didn't really like playing it digitally, which is strange because normally I do.
I don't know. There was something about that digital. It was just soulless. It became boring. It was a slog, and I love Terraforming Mars.
Yeah, it was weird. One for me is Dominion, and that's only because I've learned that I am absolutely flippin' terrible at the game because the easiest AI destroys me every game I play, and I have no fun. And I didn't realize I'm just horrible at Dominion. So I don't know if the app programmers are like extremely apt at programming and the easy difficulty is way too difficult, or I'm just terrible. But man, I played that recently on our flight to St. Louis because we had no Wi-Fi, and you don't need a Wi-Fi connection to play the app. And I was playing the Dominion app, and I'm just like I'm like losing 13 to 58, and I'm like, what's going on? This is supposed to be easy AI. So yeah, the Dominion app, but that's only because I lose all the time, not because it's a bad implementation. Actually, it's a really good implementation, and it's one of those ones that fixes the setup problem. Because one of the problems with Dominion is deciding what decks to use, and then finding those decks and sorting those decks and putting them out on the table. Even more so, though, is putting it away, where you then have to sort everyone's deck back out to the other decks to put them into the proper slots in the box.
All right. Next up, do you remember the first time and place you played your first video game?
Yes, at my Aunt Lucille and uncle's house with my two cousins, Matt and Jason, on a Bally Astrocade. I got to play Gunfight, which
my parents'
predates the
basement.
Atari.
I would have been like 5. You know, the paddles? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure my first would have been on the Commodore 64. I'm going to say, it's a little arguable whether it's a video game, but Lemonade Stand on a audio cassette would have been the first for me.
Now, what was the first board game that I played digitally I have no idea. We had downloaded a bunch of them on Xbox way back in the day. I mean, when you get outside of the whole chess, classic games, whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say one of my favorite games of all time is still Battle Chess. Does that count? I loved that game.
So yeah, the next question is in fact, what was the first board game to be elevated? And I think it kind of has to either be chess or checkers.
Well, yeah, it has to be. I assume chess, checkers, Go. Plus, I played a million versions of card games. Solitaire, like, come on.
That's true.
Every computer you've ever bought has Solitaire on it. I played tons of versions of Boggle. The official Boggle on the original Nintendo Game Boy in gray was fantastic. So,
I mean, they had strip poker back on the Commodore 64. All right. And then Roll for Crit Live jumps in. Now, a lot of this is talking about digital versions or one on simulators like Board Game Arena. What about when a game releases its own copy with music and art? Do you feel certain games need to be their own thing versus just thrown onto a tabletop simulator of some form or other?
Well, like, for example, you were talking about the Asmodee Carcassonne being a much better version. I'm drawing a blank. I know there's some other slick ones that are out there that are full-on.
So I was a little confused by what about a game releases its own copy with music and art? Does that mean a digital version of an existing board game?
Standalone stuff. So like the Terraforming Mars game on Steam versus playing Terraforming Mars on Board Game Arena or on Tabletop Simulator.
Oh, okay. So yeah. Oh, there's tons of good ones. My favorite. Here's another example, going back to our early topic about games that are fiddly that actually work better as a digital implementation, is Small World on a tablet specifically, not on a phone, on something big enough, because it just feels like playing the board game, because you just use your finger to drag your units and drop them off like you would in real life. It very accurately recreates the game while doing all the math. So you don't, forget to add that one mountain, or forget to use your flying ability, or forget to put coins. That's one of the big ones. We're talking about upkeep phases and things you forget. How many games have the put a coin on everything left in the market? How often have you forgot those? Computers don't forget those.
It's startling how quick you can tear through a game of Small World in digital versus real life. You're like playing the AI and you're like, boom, done, next. Boom, done. I just played 4 games in a row before you set up Small World. Excellent. Let's go.
Yeah. And technically the version now out is Small World 2, even though there was no board game number 2, but it had something to do with some kind of licensing and probably Disney. So it's now called Small World 2. The digital app, it is fantastic. 2 games that I think are just absolutely fantastic as standalone digital games are Star Realms and Ascension, because you can mix and match all the decks so easy, which is something you just can't do in real life. I remember when Big J came down to Windsor and he took every Ascension set that was out and mixed them together, and he literally threw his cards in a big cardboard box and shook it and threw it up in the air, and people dug out of the box to draw their hands. Like, it was ridiculous.
And it didn't work. It was
and it didn't really work. And it beat up his cards. Like, those two apps.
It was a bad idea all around.
I couldn't believe he was doing it. I'm like watching him sit there, shake this box full of cards. Talk about someone who only loved games as games and fun and put no value on their monetary. Like, my game gets beat up. Who cares? It's supposed to be fun, right? More board gamers could use that attitude.
Let's put them all together and see what happens. Yeah, no.
But yeah, Star Realms and Ascension are two of my favorite apps. We still play the Star Realms app. Just the other day, I don't remember if I talk about this when we get to the Bellhop's Tabletop, but just the other day, Deanna and I actually downloaded the Colony Wars expansion for the first time, because I've been playing the Star Realms app forever, but just using the base deck and like the Gambits and a couple other small expansions. And I'm like, that's it. We're going to put Colony Wars on this. It'll feel like a whole new experience. And sure enough, it did. But yeah, those are one. But to be fair, I played physically the latest Ascension set at Gamma Expo and had a fantastic time. And I liked holding the cards and touching them and getting to read them. And one of the things I don't like in the app is it's very hard to see what your opponent's doing. So the other part Roll for Crit Live mentions is Tabletop Simulator. Now, I think Tabletop Simulator and virtual tabletops aren't the same as like video games, right? They're not digital games. They're tools to be able to play games digitally, which I think is totally different. Now, Tabletop Simulator does have some scripting, right? The more scripting, the more video game like it is, but I don't feel it's a video game anymore. For one, there's usually not an AI. You have to play against other people. And most of them, you still have to manipulate everything. You still have to pick it up. You still got to like hit the shuffle the deck button. You still have a hand of cards. And I think they're a great alternative to playing games. But like another thing that the video game versions have done to me is teach me that I've been playing a game wrong.
Oh, that's true.
I played wrong for 20 years at least. And then I got the app and something happened and I was like, wait a minute. And I was doing the flood phase wrong. That's all I remember now. This was years ago. I discovered this like 10, 15 years ago, and I had already been playing it for a long time. You're not going to, you could get that on Tabletop Simulator, virtual tabletops, right? Because the game may not allow you to do the wrong thing. So it kind of error checks, but it's not the same as a video game to me.
Well, to me,
don't
there's
do
three
the math.
levels.
It's not going to add up.
There's three
Sorry,
levels
Sean,
to me.
ahead.
There's the Tabletop Simulator, which is very much trying to reproduce the at the table situation with all that physical manipulation. There's the board game arena, which is far more mechanized and far more digital, but it's still trying to be a tabletop experience. It's just taking away the fiddliness of Tabletop Simulator and giving you the power of computation. And then there is the full-on app version where they can throw in all kinds of quality of life features and music and this and that and the other thing. Like the Carcassonne one, they can do a bunch of little like highlighting areas and outlining things and, you know, flashing things for you to make your life easier and make the game fun or more fun or easier for some people and stuff like that. So there's really those three different levels that all have a place, but sort of all need to be taken in their own.
I only like the medium-sized chair. I don't want to play the full-on video game version. I don't like Tabletop Simulator, but Board Game Arena is a good compromise for when you can't find people in real life to play with.
Although, to be fair, with your eyesight, we probably could have kept playing Aventuria because on Tabletop Simulator, because you could have zoomed in to make your cards like screen sized.
Yeah, except it's not on there. It's just the first scenarios that come in the basic box, which we played all of.
Yeah.
Well, there's probably more out there. We didn't look very well.
There are
accessibility,
but there are accessibility issues.
That's actually worth bringing up. Like as a separate thing to note, video games can make, or video, digital, whatever we want to call it, can make games more accessible. Most definitely. With screen readers, we've been able to play board games with Red Meeple Ryan online that we never could have played with in person. So that is a very good point and very important aspect of digital versions of board games. And in that aspect, I almost want every game to have a digital implementation just to make them more accessible.
Accessibility, yeah.
Well, and I mean, Castle of Burgundy, we already talked about. The reason D loves the digital implementation is because it has that quality of life feature of tooltips that makes the game so different.
Like Mo said, at one point, I haven't played it in a while now, but at one point, I had certainly played it enough. I was starting to know what the heck the tiles all did. But I still like just be able to mouse over it, see it, whatever, and the turn flows are so much quicker with the wipes.
Plus, just like colorblind too. Most of the video digital implementations, like I'm pretty sure BGA has a high contrast mode. I know the Xbox Carc, which is the official Carcassonne, has accessibility tools you can change for things like that. Like again, high contrast or changing colors and things like that. So that's a really good reason most games should at some point have some form of digital version. But all that said, overall, I would rather play in person at the same table with other people in, I think, every case. Like, even like I said, Terra Mystica is the one that's the closest to, okay, that's a bit too fiddly. And then Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven, those added tools were awesome. But I have no interest in playing the video game. We got a review copy of the Gloomhaven video game. Sean recorded a live stream of him playing it, me being the person who knew the tabletop game to walk him through some of it. And none of that interests me. Like, there's a new Frosthaven one out that looks amazing, and I have no interest in playing it whatsoever. Yep. I might want the big box Frosthaven to sit down and play, and maybe I'll find the Frosthaven helper to maybe help out with a few of the annoying things. But I want to sit at a table and play games with people. And then I'm with Deanna. If I am going to play digital, I either want one of two things. I either want to play with other people, or I want a full-on video game experience. Like, it's just me. I'm sitting down in front of my Xbox to play a game, and I want to play a game. But I've yet to find a board game or re-implementation of a board game that caught my attention enough to keep me involved over something like Spider-Man 2 or Star Wars Outlaws or a real video game that I enjoy playing. I guess probably the closest would be the deck building card games, Slay the Spire. What's the one we reviewed? And I'm drawing a complete blank from Richard Garfield. Rogue Book. And I love roguelikes, right? Like Hades is the last game that sucked me in, but that doesn't have any board game elements. So, but like for normal tabletop games, let me sit across from you and stare you in the eyes as I beat you in the game. Or I don't know what it is. I want the social aspect. To me, board gaming is a social hobby. I want that aspect. And if I'm not going to get the social, then like give me a good, well scripted, awesome graphics, awesome sounding immersive video game, because I'm going to do that on my own.
I'm not going to sit down and play the immersive video game. I might have some apps on my phone, and if it's a time killer thing, I might play it. Like, for a while there, like, I had Ticket to Ride, which I don't even like in real life, because the AI was okay. I've played a lot of Small World, but I think right now I don't even have any board game apps on my phone. So I'll go through phases where I'll download a couple of them. I'll play them till I'm thoroughly sick of them, and then I will delete them and find something else. I would rather play in person, always, always, always. And BGA, sometimes.
Yeah, I think that for me, one of the big things about BGA that has, and the reason I still have games going on BGA to this very day from when we started talking about it years ago now, is because I can play with people I've never met. I never probably will met. People who live in Oregon and Washington State that I will probably never meet, but are cool people and keep inviting me into all these games they want to try on Board Game Arena. And so I have actually played a large number of games I have never played physically on Board Game Arena because people invite me in and I just play. I never really turn down an invite to anything, even though there are times when I probably should. So that's great. But there's also, for me, there is a sort of lonely fun. I'm not into the big, massive Spider-Man type video games. So last couple of nights when I've sat down to the computer at the end of a day and I just want to decompress, I boot up Stellaris. Now, Stellaris is a video game that's been turned into a board game, and I don't know how the board game is going to be, or is turning into a board game. But that sort of game. The other one that has been in my wish list now for ages is Second Dawn for the Galaxy, which we love as a board game. But it's one of those games where if I'm sitting around for some lonely fun, that may be a really awesome digital version as well. I haven't.
I didn't even know they were doing a digital version of that.
They've got their own, like, it's like $13. It's not even expensive. I just haven't. I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. And so there's definitely an aspect of that I play. Balatro. I play a lot of sort of smaller games, single player against AI type stuff that I enjoy because I don't sit down for hours and hours and hours and get lost into video games. But yeah, I do like playing board games in person as well. I just think there are some I would probably rather play as digital than in person. And in that case, I just probably wouldn't play it in person.
So I think to answer the question, well, the premise we put in the title of the episode, which I admit was a little bit of clickbait there, was should all board games be better as digital? And no, obviously not. But I think there are some games out there that definitely work better as a digital implementation. But I also think there's a lot of games that work better in person. And I think each person is going to have to make their own choices on what their level is, how much setup and takedown and fiddliness they're willing to put up with at the expense of losing the social aspect of gaming by making it go digital.
I don't like e-readers either. Apparently, I'm just all about the dead trees. Give me my cardboard.
And with that,
we could get into RPGs too. I'm going to mention RPGs for a minute just to go back to Sean and I when we reviewed Indominant. We sat down and played a game that very much used Roll20, and I did not enjoy the experience because it felt like I was playing Baldur's Gate 2. I felt like I was playing a digital video game, even though there was a real live GM on the other side, but they were moving sprites around and things, and I just felt like I was playing a video game, and I lost some of that immersion. It took me out of the game, but even though using tools that really should be enhancing the game, it did the exact opposite to me and made it all feel once removed, and I didn't care about my character because it was just the sprite on the screen that was moving around.
Ignore him. We're just talking about board games.
To be fair, I feel the same way about using miniatures in person in RPGs. So,